Hmm. Now, I know you thought that was beautiful when it was, right? As Al Jolson said, you ain't heard nothing yet. And I'm not talking about my message. I'm talking about the music that's coming after the message, okay? So stay here for a while. um, in Christianity, there are two teachings, if you would, that in some ways, seem to be diametrically opposed. They're not totally, but it just comes across that way sometimes. And what I would say is that each of us, and we believe there are many paths to God, pick a path. And sometimes we choose a different path. And many of us in unity have chosen a different path. It doesn't make it totally 100% right. It's just right for each of us because the Christ within is guiding us in this direction. As a child, as a young adult, what I believed and what I was taught is Orthodox Christianity. Especially at Easter, I was taught that Jesus was crucified, that Jesus died, that Jesus went to hell for 3 days. That's part of the Nicene Creed. That Jesus was lifted out of hell, then was back in the tomb, and then came out of the tomb and was resurrected and then ascended. And I was taught that he was the only one who could do that. As I myself grew in a little different direction, questioned some of that, I came into unity and learned a different way of verbalizing it and saying what maybe I started to believe. And that was that Jesus was not the only one who can resurrect. That Jesus was an example of the light, was an example of the love, was a way shower, if you would, of what each of us can become. That each of us, just like Jesus, are spiritual beings. Each of us are having that spiritual experience, and we're doing it in the human condition. And what Jesus was teaching, we believe, and what he was showing us is that you and I can have the same power he had. That you and I can live the same kind of life he lived. He was at peace with himself and the world when he left us. I personally believe that he resurrected. I believe, as I understand science today and what I've been learning and what has been taught, is that it actually proves that point. Because you see, what science says is that we have control over the cells in our body. Our cells have intelligence, but that intelligence is directed by you and me. That means we have dominion over our lives, the way we think, the way we act, the way we are. Charles Fillmore said 101 years ago that one of the differences he felt between those two ways of believing is that one teaches men how to die, and we have to learn how to die. The second way teaches us how to live. One, in some ways, keeps us in the tomb until we're ready to ascend to heaven. Now, my mother believed that with all her heart. And because she believed that and it was her consciousness, that's where I think she is, whatever heaven is. So I'm not putting it down, but I'm saying maybe, just maybe, there's a different way of looking at it. And that is that one is like a time capsule. And I've got to struggle through life because I was taught I wasn't worthy of life until I die and go to heaven. I got to get out of the time capsule to become free. What we teach here in unity is that eternal life starts right now, right here. And that what Jesus was teaching us is that each of us has that power because we are spiritual beings. We have that power to direct ourselves, to direct our lives, to direct our thoughts. And when we do that, we are resurrected each and every day. Paul said, take on the mind of Christ. Paul said, Christ in you, your hope of glory. Paul said, may your minds be transformed. May your minds be renewed by the transformation of those minds. What a wonderful story. And it is a contrast. And I know that we have people in this church who believe in the first way and still do, and it's fine. And we have those who say, no, I see it a different way, and that's wonderful too. It is what unity teaches. And so what we have to start to understand, I believe, is that instead of staying in the tomb ourselves, that we have that ability to move from the tomb. That anytime we begin to understand the spiritual essence of our beingness, we are able to move into life. We are able to see life differently. And as Suzanne said, we start to see life not as a challenge but an opportunity. And even in the darkest moments, we see hope. We see opportunity. We see a way to live. We don't stay in the tomb. As Stephen read so beautifully, when Mary Magdalene and Mary, the son of James, came to the tomb, they saw that the stone had been rolled away. And what is that symbolic of? What does that speak to in each of us? A couple areas that I think about and I want to share this morning. Number one is that we can come out of the tomb. We can let the stone be rolled away by seeing ourselves as pure health rather than seeing ourselves as diseased. Even when circumstances, when what we see or what we're told would tell us otherwise. That rolling away the stone brings us into the beauty of health. And I have seen this in this congregation. I have seen it in other congregations. That you and I do have that ability to not stay in a tomb of disease, but instead to rise up into a tomb, or out of a tomb, into the sunlight, okay, of life itself, into that healing process. And first and foremost, it is spiritual healing. I didn't say cure. I said spiritual healing. When I am spiritually healed, it really doesn't make a lot of difference, although I probably will struggle to stay here, whether I stay here or not. Really. Because I know that I am this eternal being. I know that the power of God flows through me. I know and understand that I am resurrected, ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. I understand that Jesus showed me the way. I understand that Jesus demonstrated how we can resurrect and literally ascend. And each and every one of us, if we are spiritually healed, can accept that either we are cured and will be cured, and that's what happens for most people, thank God. Or, if we decide that our path is to make the transition at this time, we can do it spiritually okay. Isn't that freeing? The second thing is, as you recall, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb. Now, Mary, metaphysically, any time in the Bible, means love, unconditional love. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary, the mother of James. Number of Marys in the Bible. Mary Magdalene means love. Now, Mary Magdalene's a little different. Her first name means unconditional love. And what it represents is the Magdalene in her. The Magdalene in Mary, metaphysically, is one who went to the tomb and felt lost, felt fear, felt like her master had been stolen, was gone, felt lonely, It represents sometimes relationships gone astray. And Mary Magdalene probably had all of that in her life. But what she had learned to do was come out of the tomb and to seek the Christ. And when you seek the Christ, you are going to find the Christ. I don't care where you are, what you believe, how you believe it, it's just going to happen. There's no magic formula. And so as we step into, and as she stepped into that Christ knowledge, you see, what happens is she's no longer alone. When you and I understand we are spiritual beings, we can no longer feel alone. The two just don't go together. When you and I look back on past relationships and keep them in the tomb, what happens is we weigh on those, we focus on those, and we think things cannot get any better. And sometimes we even blame the other person for the lack of a good relationship. I mean, I only did it for 15 years in my ex-wife. But I finally got to the point that I understood Richard had something to do with it. And that I could either build off of that failed relationship, and that's what it was. I could build off of it in a new way because of what I learned, or I could repeat it. And that was up to me. If I'd stayed in the tomb with it, I would have repeated it. When I come out into the light and let the stone be rolled away, then I step into that new relationship having learned something, having understood something about myself. Seeing myself hopefully as different. Seeing myself as having an opportunity to grow because of the experiences. Mary Magdalene, because of her unconditional love, was able to love herself and see herself differently. And Jesus taught her that. And she could behold the Christ in her. And when she was able to behold her Christ in her, she was able to behold the Christ resurrected. The Christ that was Jesus at that time. Totally resurrected. And so when we are willing to roll the stone away in our lives, when we're really to, sometimes being in that womb, being in that tomb might be kind of comfortable. Pretty good. I mean, talk to a 8-month-old baby before they come out. I bet you they're thinking, this is pretty comfortable here. And what in the world is going to happen next? Oh my goodness gracious, there's a little light. Oh my golly day, I wonder if I'll make it. Oh my gosh, this is painful. I think I'll cry. And then they cry out and they breathe. Life as it's meant to be. We all do that sometimes. And so, as we look at this idea of rolling away the stone, I want to share a story about a little fellow named Ryan. And this is what I would call Ryan's Easter gift. Ryan was just a young fellow, and he and his mother, for 2 or 3 Sundays before Easter, were coming to church for the first time. And Ryan was asked to be in the Easter play, so they were in this beautiful sanctuary, and they were practicing for Easter, but Ryan didn't know the other kids very well. But one of the things his teachers noticed was he had these beautiful brown eyes that had depth to them. You see children that have that depth in them, the old soul in them. It was kind of what she saw in Ryan. But Ryan, like most children, when you don't know anybody, you go sit on this side of the room while the other kids are over here having fun. And he went and he sat on the other side. The teacher noticed that. And so Kay was the name of his teacher. She went and sat with Ryan. And as she sat with Ryan, she could tell he wanted to say something. But she, being a wise person, just looked kind of straight ahead and didn't force anything out of him. After a few moments, he looked over and he said, "Excuse me, ma'am. Is God coming today?" Some of us spend a lifetime asking that question, is God coming today? And she thought, what a wonderful, beautiful question. What wisdom this young child had. Is God coming today? And so she stopped the others who were talking, and she said, I think we ought to discuss this question that Ryan's brought up, this wonderful question. And she asked him for permission, and of course he wanted it to happen. And what happened was that she said, this discussion, is God coming today? And everybody kind of got quiet and thought about it. And she said she found it on herself to start trying to explain to him a little bit of how to give an answer to that. And she said, Ryan, I kind of have a hunch. I kind of think God's already here. I don't think he has to come. And the reason I think he is already here, because I think God is inside of you and me. And I think we bring God here. You guys bring God here, and you share it with one another. You experience God here because you share it with one another. And Ryan listened for a few minutes, and she continued to explain. And she said, how cookies have sugar in them and they're really sweet and delicious? Well, I think God placed himself in you and made you kind of sweet and delicious. And a small child can relate to that. And she went on to say, God sends us to each other for some reason. And she said, Ryan, and all of you children know how sometimes your mommy sends daddy to pick you up at school? And they all shook their heads, yes, except Ryan. And you know how your dad sends your mom to school to pick you up? And all the kids said yes, except Ryan. And she looked at Ryan, and Ryan got tears in his eyes. And Ryan said, my dad went to heaven about 3 weeks ago. That's when I wanted to know, is God coming? Well, the kids and the teachers got very quiet. Finally, Kay went deep within herself. And she said, Ryan, I think that's why you're here. Because you have brought not only God, but your dad here. Your dad's spirit, I'm sure, is in you. Maybe you look like him, I don't know. Maybe you act like him a little bit, I don't know. He said, well, they say I'm funny like he was. I said, okay. And you've brought that to us this morning. And we have shared it together. Now we're with you to support you and love you through this. And everything got quiet. Kay said, the way I know God is here sometimes in a situation like this, Ryan, is because some kind of way my heart just gets bigger. It just gets bigger as I let the Christ evolve in me and touch out and reach out to touch you. And as I do that, I then know the answer. And all of a sudden, Ryan's eyes lit up. And he said, I feel my heart. I feel my heart growing. It's working. I understand. God is here, and I brought Daddy and God here to share with you guys. Now, folks, that's the resurrection. That's what it's all about. Is each of us bringing God here because God is within us. And God is outside of us also because God's bigger than any one of us. But God is truly within us if God is omnipresent. You can't be omnipresent and be outside, okay? Right? So we are all one together. And so, my desire for each of you, and I started off kind of this way and I'd like to end it, is that you can fulfill this law of resurrection. It's a law of resurrection. That you can live life abundantly, as Jesus said. And not only will our bodies resurrect, and I mean the body of Christ, not the physical body, but also that our minds can resurrect, that our hearts can resurrect. Some of you are sitting here wondering, well, when is my spiritual awakening going to take place? And let me assure you, it is working in you right this moment, maybe at the subconscious level. And as it moves into the subconscious level, at some point we open up and we bring it into our consciousness, and we're aware of it. And when we bring it into our consciousness, we start to grow even faster in our spiritual awareness, so that we become the unconditional love. We become the resurrection of the life, the resurrection of abundance, the resurrection of love, and the resurrection of eternity. We are that. You are that. Happy Easter.